Last week, in our Habits That Shape a Heart series, we began talking about obedience. But before we talked about what obedience looks like, we wanted to make sure we were aiming at the right thing. Because biblical obedience is about more than getting our children to do what we say. We're not simply trying to control behavior. We're helping form a child who can hear what is right and learn to respond to it faithfully. And that kind of response, well, that's built over time. It grows through ordinary moments, repeated instruction, and patient follow through, and of course, lots of opportunities to practice. But that brings me to a very practical question. What does obedience actually look like in the home? What do we do when we've given the instruction and our child is distracted? When we find ourselves repeating ourselves? When everyone is trying to get out the door and we don't feel especially calm or patient? And that's where we're going today. In this episode, we're bringing obedience into the everyday, and we're looking at three simple but important parts of training a faithful response: giving clear instruction, allowing space for a response, and following through consistently. Because these small interactions are doing more than just getting us through the moment, they're actually shaping a pattern in the heart of our child and in our hearts too. And that's really what this Habits That Shape a Heart series is about. It's about looking beyond outward behavior and asking how God uses the ordinary moments of family life to form Christ-like character in our children and often in us as well. So last week we slowed down and just tried to reframe obedience a little, not as control, not as a constant struggle, but as something we're actually building, a child who can hear what is right and respond to it. And that sounds good. But then we wake up on a Tuesday morning and it's like, okay, but what does that actually look like right now? Because real life doesn't feel like a definition oftentimes. It feels like we're repeating ourselves, we're trying to get out the door, we're asking them to do something yet again, and we're wondering if anything we're doing is actually sticking. So let's bring this all way down into the everyday. Because obedience is not formed in big moments, it's formed in really small ones. It's formed in things like, hey, come here a second, let's talk. Or go ahead and put that away first. Or let's try that again. Just normal, everyday interactions. And here's where this matters. In those moments, we're not just trying to get a result, we're actually training their response. And that's the shift in our focus, because it's really easy to slip into, I just need them to do this, or I just need this to happen. But what we're really doing is helping our child learn how to respond when they are asked to do something. We're going to talk about the need to give them clear instruction, expecting a response, and following through consistently. And that sounds simple, but that's actually the work. So let's follow through and let's walk through what this can look like in real life. First, clarity matters more than we think. Sometimes I found myself giving my children instructions while I was distracted, while they were distracted, or while all of us were halfway paying attention. And then I would find myself getting frustrated or them getting frustrated when things didn't happen like they should have. But part of training obedience is helping them hear clearly. This sometimes meant taking a little face in my hands and making eye contact, or having a teenager stop and turn towards me and look at me and make eye contact. Sometimes it was using simple, direct words. And sometimes it was making sure they actually understood what was being asked by asking them to repeat it back to me. This wasn't done perfectly every time, but it was definitely done intentionally. Second, I found myself needing to pause and give space for them to give a response back to me after I gave instructions. And this is the one I think I skipped the most. And it's the one I see parents skip the most. We say something and then we immediately repeat it or we escalate it. But if we're training our child's will, we have to give it a moment to work. We have to give them a moment to hear, to process, and to choose to do what's right. And sometimes that pause is where the heart formation is actually happening. And then third, we have to follow through. This is tough. This is where the rubber meets the road. We have to calmly and consistently follow through, not emotionally, not reactively, just steadily. Because what we're teaching is this matters. And over time, that consistency is what builds trust. Not just you have to listen, but they have to know what to expect from you. And I think it's important to say this too. This doesn't mean it's going to feel smooth or it's going to go smoothly. There will still be slow responses or distracted responses and even resistant responses. But let's think of our own selves in our walk with the Lord. Don't we often have slow responses or distracted responses when He's trying to talk with us? And sometimes we have resistant responses. But God continues to have patience and grace with us as He walks us on the road of sanctification. So when we see those same responses in our children, that's not failure, that's the process. Because obedience is something that is formed over time and through repetition. It's not one perfect moment and then it's all done. And here's something else to keep in mind as you're walking through this. Your tone matters more than you think. Because if obedience always feels like it's something that has to be rushed or that comes out of your frustration or out of your tension, then the child begins to associate obedience with pressure. But if it's calm, clear, and steady, then it begins to feel like something that they can step into, not something they're constantly pushing against. And again, this connects back to what we've already talked about. When a child is learning thankfulness, they're more open. When they're learning generosity, they're more willing to respond. And now, in those everyday moments, they're learning what to do with that. They're learning to respond faithfully with obedience. And that's what we're after. Again, not perfection, just a steady pattern of I hear and I respond faithfully. But let's also remember the work of the Holy Spirit in our child's life. We are called to be faithful in our child training, in our heart discipleship of our children. But we also need to pray for our children and pray for God to work in their hearts and in their lives. Now, this week, just focus on one interaction, just one. Pick something that happens every day. And instead of rushing through it, slow it down a little bit. Be clear in your instructions as to what you expect when it comes to obedience. Pause, give them time to respond, and then follow through calmly. That's it. Just pick one. Not everything, just one place to be intentional, because that's how this starts to take root. And as you step into this week, my prayer for you is this, that you would feel freedom to slow down, even in the middle of the busy everyday moments. That you would begin to see those small interactions as the place where something deeper is being formed within you and within your child, and where those interactions are places where the Holy Spirit is at work. And I pray that you would have patience with the process and that you would trust the Lord that consistency really does matter more than perfection. And that over time you would begin to see your child not just hearing you, but responding. Thanks for joining us today on the Legacy Parenting Podcast. And as you move into this week, remember that obedience is rarely formed through one big parenting moment. It grows through the small, repeated interactions of everyday life. Clear instruction, a little space to hear and respond, and calm, consistent follow-through. It may not always feel like much is happening in those moments, but over time, you are helping your child to build a pattern. I hear what is right, and I respond faithfully. So give yourself permission to work on this slowly. You don't have to address everything at once. Just choose that one interaction. And if you're finding our Habits That Shape a Heart series helpful, be sure to subscribe to the Legacy Parenting Podcast so you don't miss the conversations ahead. And if another parent comes to mind, you could use this encouragement. to encourage them. We'd love for you to share the episode with them as well. You can also visit the Legacy Parenting website for articles, resources, and practical biblical encouragement through the Legacy Resource Center and the Legacy Parenting blog. Now, until next time, remember, you don't have to parent perfectly, but you are called to parent faithfully, trusting God to use the ordinary moments of your home to shape hearts and build a legacy that lasts.